Hello my friends, welcome back to the channel. I am so thankful that you are here as always, and if this is your first time, hey, welcome. Thanks for stopping by. The idea for today's video was actually given to me in the comments section of my top 10 novels of all time video. One of you pointed out that most of the top 10 identify as male. I think there were only 2 female identifying people in that list, and asked for a top 10 of books by women, and that is a great idea. So that's what we're doing today. Let's go! In the interest of fairness, the 2 novels from the last list are not going to be included in this one because they would take up 2 spots, and I want to give them to something new. But for those of you that don't know what those 2 novels are, I will link my top 10 video to this down below. And also, I'm just going to tell you what they are real quick. My number 2 favorite novel of all time was The Tale for the Time Being by Ruth Ozeki. Love it to death, and you'll hear me gush about it in that video. And the other one that I mentioned in that video was Near to the Wild Heart by Clarice Lispector. She's one of the best to ever do it, and yeah, she's in the top 10. So this list will be completely new material. You might see some familiar faces, but yeah, this is the new stuff. This is that new. So starting things off at number 10, we have To the Lighthouse by Virginia Woolf. Now, there are many different novels that you can choose from for Virginia Woolf. I have featured Orlando on Weird Books. Many people swear by Mrs. Dalloway, but for some reason, To the Lighthouse just really speaks to me. The way that Woolf gets inside the heads of her characters and really gives each of them a unique voice within their stream of consciousness is actually pretty impressive to behold. The characters are compelling. The way that the overall story is constructed is pretty ingenious, to the point where like a little montage section, if you will, of time passing is so well written. Just that one part, that montage is so well written about the passage of time that you get emotional. I will also mention that I listened to the audiobook version of this novel first, and it was narrated by Nicole Kidman, who did a breathless, wonderful performance, and she really understands the intricacies and the nuance of the language, and I highly recommend it. For number 9, another book that I have recently featured over on TikTok. This is going to be Persepolis by Marjane Satrapi. Now, Persepolis is not a novel per se, but I'm going to count it because this is my list, so here we are. Persepolis is the graphic novel memoir of Satrapi's youth growing up in pre-revolution Iran, and then the fallout effects of the Islamic Revolution in that area. The story is at once very specific to Satrapi and her family, but feels universal in that the suffering of others should transcend cultural boundaries and help bring out the empathy of anyone who's reading it. The art style of the graphic novel does a great job, not distracting, but enhancing and illuminating the story that's being told. And man, she makes some great points about the nature of freedom, the nature of belief, and the nature of yourself, what it means to be an individual in a society that demands the obliteration of the self, really. And not in the Zen way, where you let go of your ego, but rather the crushing forced conformity of not only a totalitarian government, but also just oppressively closed-minded social circles. From there, we're going to another book that I featured on Weird Books this time. This is The Vegetarian by Han Kang. This book is so deeply unsettling. The short little snippet of it is that a woman, a South Korean woman, I can say it on this platform. TikTok doesn't like it when you say South Korea sometimes. South Korean woman has a nightmare in which she is in a slaughterhouse. She's covered in blood. It's the one very gory moment of the book. And as a result of this nightmare, she decides that she's not going to eat meat anymore. And from there, it just spirals out of control as she begins more and more losing her grip on reality. And the people around her react in different ways, whether it be anger to take advantage of her, or in the case of her sister, to genuinely be concerned for her well-being. The novel is short, but man, does it pack a punch. It stays with you long after. I am not a vegetarian because of this novel, but it definitely helped sort of push me in that direction. And it also really made me think about hey, we don't know what's going on with the people that we are saying are crazy, that we are classifying as crazy. So I would say it helped me become a little more empathetic as well. It's a remarkable novel. For number 7, we're staying somewhat on the topical theme of the last two kind of combined. This is both a memoir and has some heavy Korean roots in it. This is Crying in H Mart by Michelle Zauner. This memoir might be the saddest thing I've ever read in my life, and I loved it. Michelle Zauner is the front woman, the person behind the musical group Japanese Breakfast, which is where you might know her name from. Her music is fantastic. This memoir, however, is not about really her time becoming a famous musician. It is about her mother's diagnosis with cancer and her final days on Earth. Zauner does a great job setting up her family dynamic of her mother being kind of overbearing at times, but also super sweet and caring at other times, and helps find common ground between the two of them in food. And that's the other interesting thing about this book. I would alternate between literally crying reading this book to going, damn, that sounds delicious. Because in between the unspeakably heartbreaking scenes of what's happening with her mother, Zauner gives us some amazing play-by-play on Korean food and how it helps bring her and her mother together, in particular in her mother's final days. It is a wildly sad memoir, but man, it's so good. It's so good. Goddamn. And now for something completely different. Number 6 is The Haunting of Hill House by Shirley Jackson. Shirley Jackson is, for my money, one of the best dialogue writers of all time. She has a way of giving each of her characters distinct, idiomatic things in their speech patterns or their word choice, their vocabulary, what have you, that help them really jump off the page and distinguish themselves from others. One of my biggest criticisms of a lot of fair to middling literature is that all of the characters speak with the same voice. It was my main criticism of, for example, The Light of the Jedi, the High Republic novel. I felt everyone spoke exactly the same. That is not the issue with Shirley Jackson. Everyone has a unique voice, which helps bring the story to life, and in particular, the relationship between the characters. And that's to say nothing about the incredibly well-crafted horror story that The Haunting of Hill House is. If you've seen the Netflix TV show, that has nothing to do with this novel. They've basically just taken the name for the name recognition and the basic idea of a haunted house and just denigrated the Shirley Jackson name. I might sound dramatic, but I really hate what they did with that show. I really hate it. The movie The Haunting, not the most recent one, the classic one, the black and white one, that one, ooh, that's closer to what Shirley Jackson wrote, where the only thing that you outright see is a weird bend in a door. Not to give anything away for a 60-year-old novel at this point, but Shirley Jackson does such a good job of almost showing you what is frightening in every given situation, and as a result, your brain fills in the gaps, and that is what makes this novel so scary. It's skill and her absolute spot-on instinct to almost crack the door open and show us what's inside. It's great. Highly recommend. Highly recommend. For number 5, we're coming up to something where I'm kind of cheating a little bit. I'm going to do 2 novels to take up the 1 space because they tell a cohesive story, and it's not quite a trilogy, and it's my list, and I can do what I want. Number 5. Are we on 5? I think we're on 5. We're on 5. We're going to say 5. We're on 5. Number 5 is the Earthseed series by Octavia Butler. Now, Octavia Butler is one of those voices that if you know, you know. No one does it quite like her within the realms of sci-fi and fantasy. She is inclusive, and inclusive in a way where you learn about new underrepresented cultures in the world around you because they are put front and center in her novels. And Earthseed is a great example of that. So the story of the Earthseed books, which are The Parable of the Sower and The Parable of the Talents, is that of Lauren Oye Olamina. She's an African-American teenager living in a post-apocalyptic United States where resources have become remarkably difficult to come by. She herself is a hyper-empath, meaning if she sees someone in pain, she feels that pain herself. This is an offshoot of her mother using a new experimental drug when she was pregnant with her. It ties into the themes of the novels so well. What could be a gimmick in the hands of a lesser author pays off in a big way. So I don't want to give too much away because there's a lot going on there, but there are a lot of really important themes of racism, classism, control, and toxic Christianity. And the overall philosophical points that are made in the novels are so compelling that by the end of it, you will consider joining the fictional religion that Lauren Oye Olamina creates in the books, because damn, it makes a lot of sense. It makes a lot of sense. Octavia Butler, one of the best to do it. One of the best to do it. Next up, we have a book that requires no introduction, really. It's To Kill a Mockingbird by Harper Lee. I'm not going to spend too much time on it because most people are familiar with this novel. It's a legendary piece of American fiction. Up until the ill-conceived release of Go Set a Watchman, it was Harper Lee's only novel, and it won the Pulitzer Prize, became an amazing movie, an amazing stage play, and there are criticisms to be made of it. I saw someone on TikTok point out, like, hey, it does infantilize the African-American community a little bit. I agree with that to a certain extent, but I don't think it takes away from this novel and the importance that it holds in the American zeitgeist of literature. In particular, the creation of the Finch family, Jem, Atticus, and Scout, they are each very important to people who read the novel in their own different ways. Number 3, we're coming up on the big number 3. This is going to be My Brilliant Friend by Elena Ferrante. This is one of those novels where when I first encountered it, both the cover and the synopsis of it made me think that this wouldn't be a book for me. But people whose opinions I trusted on literature assured me left, right, and center that this would be right in my wheelhouse, and boy were they correct. Boy were they right. So the novel is the first in a series called the Neapolitan series, and it takes place in Italy, in a poorer part of Italy, and follows the coming of age of 2 young girls into young women who go on very separate paths, even though they both carry with them so much potential. And the absolute gorgeous prose that in the original Italian I'm sure is much better, but in the translation that I read was fantastic. It's so good. It's so good. And the snapshots of life are just so compelling. It's just beautiful. It's hard to really pin down what makes My Brilliant Friend so good without just going, oh, it's a good story, oh, there's great prose or something like that. But it's just so good. I'm just going to say it's good a few more times. It's good. It's good. It's good. It's good. It's good. It's good, precious. What is wrong with me? Number 2, when I was making this list, my mind kept floating back to theater a little bit because very often women playwrights are not given any sort of room within the discussion, and I wanted to rectify that with my list because it's my list, damn it. And for my money, one of the best people at it today is Sarah Roll, and I love her play, The Vibrator play. So The Vibrator play tells of the creation of the actual sexual device, a vibrator. But at the time, it was not considered a sex toy. It was considered something used to treat hysteria in women because, you know, sexism. But the play from there becomes this wonderful exploration of female sexuality, of intimacy between 2 partners, And the final scene of the play, and I don't want to give it away because it is so powerful, but if you have a strong theater of the mind, if you really can picture what it is that you are reading, in particular when reading theater, you will be absolutely moved by the ending of this because it just ties up every conflict in such a perfect way that in the hands of a lesser playwright would seem so saccharine and contrived, but Sarah Ruhl lands the plane and it is so good. And that brings us to number 1, a novel that, if I'm being honest, probably should have been on the top 10 before, but I'm glad it wasn't, so I get to talk about it now. And that is The Secret History by Donna Tartt. Donna Tartt is an incredible case study within the world of literature because she only releases a book on average once every 10 years. And The Secret History was her first novel, and it got her such a big advance from her publisher that people thought there was no way that the novel could live up to the hype, and boy, were they wrong. The novel is so good. The story is of a small group of friends that go to a Vermont college that form their own secret society of sorts. And the secret society, as all of them do, eventually lead to these characters doing something horrific. The characters are so varied because you understand them. Some of them you like in spite of themselves. Some of them you hate in spite of themselves. And some of them, man, you just feel so bad for everything that they have to go through. It's a classic, cozy novel for the dark academia vibes. When I do reread it, I've read it a couple times at this point. I try to read it during winter because that feels like the most appropriate vibe for it. But yeah, The Secret History. I think she should have won her Pulitzer Prize for that one and not necessarily the Goldfinch. I do think she deserved the Goldfinch. But if I had to pick one of the two novels to give the Pulitzer to, it's easily The Secret History. Easily. And my other favorite fun fact about Donna Tartt is that she narrates the audiobook for True Grit, which is pretty weird. So yeah, look into that if you want to hear a Pulitzer Prize winning author read you a Western. Pretty cool. So there you have it, my friends. Those are my top 10 books by women. A lot of good stuff. And what I will say too is there is, I think, more variety within this list than the last list. And I mean deep variety rather than just superficial like genre variety, like the variety of voices and the variety of perspectives and stories being told. Very different. Very different. Weird. Who would have thought? So what list should I do next? I don't necessarily want to become just a list channel like What Culture or Watch Mojo or something like that. But hey, these are fun and it's good sort of like racking my brain about what I've read in the past and sort of like having a battle royale of what goes where and why. And I think it's fun. We could have fun. So leave your suggestions down below of what videos I can make next. I'm excited to see what you have to say. And hey, thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate it. If you have not done so already, please subscribe. Follow me on the TikTok. The name is @JenInsight. Follow me on the gram. I post there less, but I'm going to try to post there more, especially like just one-off thoughts that I have about things. More so than like reels, because like I'm not going to just repost my TikToks all the time. That feels a little lazy, if I'm honest. But yeah, the username for that is Jen_Insight because someone had my name. And like I said, thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate it. I'll see you next time. Love you.